Hello.
Want me to leave meeting, sign back in, technology. You can probably just leave that. When you sign in and you click no audio, that's the best way to get it. You're going to view and then, Okay, awesome. No, you grab the door, please. Okay. So first, welcome to the first no call I think we've done in a long time. I can't remember the last one that was accomplished. It was definitely before the change of command. With COVID, it makes it tricky. So thanks for covering up. I'm not going to put mine on. I'll maintain 6 feet so you can hear me clearly because there is some pretty good knowledge I want to pass y'all. So we'll start big picture first. Many of you lieutenants, especially in the room I'm talking to, may not know what the VML is, right? Vulnerable to move list, and that's what I want to talk about first. The minimum, as far as normal officer moves, is 24 months. Now, based on manning levels and needs of the Air Force, they can flex. This year, it went up to about 2 years and 8 months. It was about the cutoff, but they went to the VML. Now, being on the VML, the vulnerable to move list, which is managed on my PERS via the Talent Marketplace and MyVector, is published there as far as what they're looking at as far as manning levels, but it's managed by people. Okay, have you heard of the term functional? Right, so a functional is by airframe. They are typically senior captains or majors that are selected to do a staff tour after 1 to 2 flight tours. They are the brokers, if you will, between the Air Force, needs of the Air Force. Sorry, trying to get the question. No problem. And the commander, right? So myself and Derek Patrick, in this case, for KC-10s, KC-46s, and C-5s, works with what the needs of the Air Force is, and that depends on manning levels, and also what's needed in the Air Force, right? The spaces. And we take those spaces and put them in the spaces, all right? Now, in the past, I'll say, back when Colonel Kramer and I were young lieutenants, it was much less interface with the individual, what they wanted, family requirements, unless it was like a joint spouse, or there was like a drastic family need, talking like EFMP type stuff, humanitarian, where that was something that trumps everything else, or it was even looked at. We've moved and we've seen a positive change through our career into where there's much more interface, chief pilot position, less of just, the lieutenant colonel who's getting ready to wait for retirement, to more of lieutenant colonel who's a counselor, you know what I mean, a mentor and a friend, if you will, of the pilot force, and something that I can leverage, which has been amazing with Colonel Kramer, to figure out, take the time to see what you really want and what will benefit you and the Air Force career-wise too. There's a balance. So back to the process. Specifically to the 22nd, we've been in a growth industry since 2016, when the Air Force said, hey, the 4 aircraft of your 18 that we were put in a backup aircraft inventory, which is a maintenance term for it's just sitting on the ramp and we're not putting money or bodies to keeping them flying, we're going to buy them back. And for each one of those aircraft, there's a 2-to-1 crew ratio, right? So 4 officers and 9 enlisted for each aircraft that's bought back. So for a total of 13 individuals, math in public. Multiply it times 4 times 13 is 52 individuals, right? So we grew from the high 100s to now we're close to 250, right? So during that process, AFPC pushed us all these bodies, and a lot of those were young loadmasters, right? A lot of those were lieutenants that are sitting in the room. A lot of those were return to fly C5 folks that were in RPAs, right? So, or were in AETC, right? Even myself, the last flying tour was at Pitt, that were brought back online, like your Major Burnhams, et cetera, in order to plus up our force, right, with previous experience or from UPT to meet those levels, right? About a month ago, the Air Force said, hey, with the new budget constraints that are probably coming up, we're not going to be able to sell you back that 18th tail of the 4 we've been plussing up with. Right now we're at 15. We're going to be 16 here in a couple months, right, Major Fernandez? We're going to go to 17 here next calendar year, and that's going to be our peak, okay? And we're going to stop there, and we won't get that 18th tail. Now, in Air Force's wisdom, they push the bodies first, right, in hopes of getting them trained a year to year and a half before that iron hits the line, even though it's sitting out there, but we'll be flying it, that extra aircraft. But now they said, hey, you're not going to get that aircraft. Now we're at an overage, right? So we would have been at about 105%. I pushed some numbers on y'all's Slack messages to what our per rank UMD, unit manning document. I'm going to throw out some acronyms here and stop me, raise your hand if you don't know what that acronym is. Our unit manning document is our funded positions paid, right, that I am allocated a body to fill. We have, and I'll pull it up right now. Some of you are already looking on your phone. We have 5 lieutenant colonel positions, of which we only have 4 individuals. And you'll say, well, wait a minute, I just see yourself and Lieutenant Colonel Kramer in the room. Don't forget we have Colonel Anderson, right? And we also have Colonel Linton. Those individuals are attached. And this is a big point that I want to bring up. The Air Force does not care if you're on loan, attached, or flying the iron, right? Every other week, you know what I mean? Whether it's a local or a mission. They don't give 2 flying parts. All they care about is that you have wings on your chest, you're a qualified C-5 pilot, and you're at Travis Air Force Base. Okay? The only exception to that is over at the CRG. They are, if you want to think about it, a different group / wing, a different base that just so happens to be at Travis. Okay? So keep following my thread here and stop if you have questions. So we have 5 lieutenant colonel positions, 4 of which are manned right now, so we're undermanned lieutenant colonels. Majors, 12 of 4 filled. So when Air Force looks down, they say, holy smokes, y'all have got majors just oozing out of the freaking vents in the ceiling. You know what I mean? They're everywhere in your squadron, which in one respect, it is true. We do have a lot of majors. If you want to look back at the ADO shop, we got 7 sitting back there, 6 sitting back there, including the DO, right? Go down a little further, captains, 34-23, right? And your captains, right, are the folks, especially their first assignment, after 3 to 4 years, you're right to move. That is historical. That's been around since Colonel Kramer and I have been in the Air Force, right? And then you look at lieutenants, undermanned, which, again, some of those numbers dropped because we had promotes, right, into captain slots. Again, the Air Force really doesn't care. All they know is that we are undermanned lieutenants. So when I said, and this is where I communicate behind the scenes, and this is going to be a Q&A at the end, when I heard we were selling back, we're not going to get that 18th tail, and I was going to lose 4 officers and 9 enlisted, I said, because I knew this was going to happen, don't take my seasoned people that have 3.5, 4 years timeline station. Turn off the pipeline at UPT and don't give me lieutenants, right? Because that goes into the student load. And I want to retain talent and retain experience is a big piece because there's a safety piece to experience. And then for the enlisted side, same thing. Just stop giving me loadmaster, students. Just pause for like 6 months, which is about what we would get in 6 months. We get about, that amount of loadmaster students, maybe a little less, probably about 4 months time. The Air Force said not only no, but hell no, because the pre-established pipelines, right, with the mass scoring, UPT, there are paths that those bodies flow through lieutenants out of pilot training. And to stop that, apparently, is an act of Congress. I don't think that's true. That's what they've told me. So we're going to get those lieutenants. Why? Because they can back the data up. They say, Colonel Trumbull, I got it. That's a great idea. But right now you're 64% manned for lieutenants. You're telling me you don't want lieutenants? I said, well, yes. They're like, well, sorry, because we have other squadrons in the Air Force that are well overmanned for lieutenants right now. Even though I can look you in the eye and say, yeah, are we young? 100%. We have a lot of young captains. And as you know, when you get on captain, someone walking down the street that sees two silver bars doesn't know if you're a brand new captain, right? Or you've had a captain on for 6 years, right? And is our major select, right? Experience level is massive, especially in the C5. Does that make sense? Everyone following me so far? Okay. A lot of education here. So we don't get that aircraft back, that 18th tail. There's 4 options we can move from our dockets. All right, right there. Couple that with what our manning levels are right now for captains and majors, well over 100% the Air Force sees, okay? Then, again, a month ago, the ATC commander, Lieutenant General, his name, I want to say Wills, that's 19th Air Force Commander. His name's escaping me. The Lieutenant General, who's the commander of the ATC, met with General Brown, the new CSAP, and General Goldfein, who was then sitting CSAP, and said, we have an opportunity with COVID to help solve the pilot training crisis, right? Or the pilot crisis, you want to call it that. We're retaining a lot of individuals, majors, captains that could have gotten out, right? But they decided not to because of COVID. We have capacity in UPT. We have folks on casual, which I don't, do we have any casuals in the room? Nope. We have folks. Okay, we have folks on casual that are waiting. They're like, hey, what's the limit right now? It's not the jets. It's not the classroom spots at Vance, Laughlin, NJET, and Columbus. It's instructors. Pitt has the officers there to instruct, right? I'll tell you why, because Pitt's awesome at Randolph. You know what I mean? And they're almost always manned. And those folks, typically major lieutenant colonels that are down there, who are waiting to get out at 20 years, you know, for the airlines that are hiring, when COVID happened, they were like, just kidding. You know what I mean? Almost like what Colonel Linton did, right? Rightly so. And I told him, Colonel Hawk told him, like, that's the right call for your family. And we'll support you in OGV. And Colonel Johnson will support you in OGV to do that. So they did all that at Pitt. So Pitt's like, bring it on, baby. Like, you know, General Wills, 9th Air Force Commander, we're ready to rock. You know what I mean? If you want to send us some more individuals. So what happened? APC commander gets a call from General Brown and General Goldfein, and they say, we're going to get after this. I want you to man the pilot training squadrons over 100%. And right now they're in like the mid to low 90s, okay, for all those positions. Now, if you think about it, remember back how many instructors you had at a UPT squadron. There's a lot, right? 2 T6 squadrons, right? 2 T38 squadrons, if you have IFF there. A T1 squadron, right? There is a significant number of positions to the tune of 190. Previously, it was specifically 192 positions that have opened up that they can accept in UPT, okay? So those 192 positions were communicated from ATC to AFPC. APC said, okay, how do we parse this out? Because for one, the CAF, the Combat Air Forces, the fighter and bomber guys, or Global Strike Command can't man that, right? Even though we want to push them to T6s and T38s. The MAF also can't also do it all by themselves, so that's split it up. So we got over 150 sent to the MAF. The sheer fact of that is the General Brown said, where can I accept risk and go below 100%? It's not with the fighter squadrons and the bomber squadrons because they're already low 90s right now, and 95% is the target for all functionals. Remember those majors and captains that are sitting in the APC? So I can't accept any loss there. Where are we going to send it? I'll accept loss. And he looked at what the average number was of all the MAF squadrons from the Mobility Air Forces, right? So not just AMC, but UCOM and PACOM, right? Because there's some C-12, C-130 squadrons, C-17 squadrons there. Where can we accept risk and go down to 95%? And it's there. So we got the 150 plus of those 192 that are going over to the MAF bus, people that fly big jets. So when I got the word that it was coming down, there's really nothing we could do. And I asked the question, okay, how do we compare to like Dover? How do we compare to Charleston, right? How do we compare to Dakota? We're like healthy. We're super healthy compared to them. Just looking at the numbers, I can have a narrative all day long. And the word I got was they don't care. Like they don't care. Like if you want to talk about health and experience letter, like call over to the C-130 squadron at Little Rock. And a buddy of mine is the commander there right now. And I was like, hey, dude, what's it like? He's like, it's freaking young. You know, we retained a few majors, right? Because of the Air Force, with COVID and things, you know, the airlines aren't hiring, but it's pretty bad over here too. I was like, okay, well, that's good to know. So I said, well, how can I get ahead of this, right? I don't want to be in receive mode of assignments because typically, you know, Colonel Kramer and I are used to this. The squadron commanders get a blast of, hey, I've got a C-37 Ramstein, I've got, you know, a C-12 to Riyadh, and you've got 5 white jets. You got 2 T-1s to Laughlin, you got a T-6 to Columbus, and a T-1 to Vance. Here's the dates, figure it out. And then the squadron commander goes, all right, who do I have? What do they want? Make some phone calls, and then it just happens. Where I was like, had a conversation with DP, and I said, Derek Patrick, our functional, I said, can I get ahead of this? Because right now there's a bunch of spaces available. I have some faces, and I can get potentially what we want. He's like, perfect. Do it. Tell me what you want. Let's do it now. Sense of urgency, right? So over the past, Colonel Kramer started meeting Thursday, Friday of last week. I made some phone calls this weekend, met with some individuals that are on the VML to figure out what people would accept if pushed into ATC. So at least we can say, hey, I know you don't want a T6 to Laughlin, but how about a T1 to Columbus? Right? Options are good. So we did that. We have 6 individuals moving. Those assignments have been locked in preparation for the other squadron commanders on base, which I have been talking to them, seeing how they're maneuvering as well, and they're trying to do the exact same thing. They've yet to lock theirs in. We were the first ones out of gate to get that finalized. We did very well under the circumstances that I've talked through right now, as far as individuals that needed to send to AETC. The fact that if sent to AETC, to white jets, and I'm going to use the term white jet to refer to AETC as opposed to a white jet like Big OSA being like a C-40 or a C-37. Small OSA is C-21, right? VIPSAM is actually the correct term for C-37, C-40s, and what's the 757? C-32 is the correct term, VIPSAM. So that's where we're at right now. I've notified a couple individuals. I have a few more individuals to notify along the way. In our opinion, and again, this is going back to the way it was in the past, I see this as a success given the circumstances, as opposed to just receiving something and having to just push it to somebody, as opposed to go get something. And that, again, is kind of what we're trying to get after in Double Deuce, from ops to professional development to assignments. You know, everything we do, we're trying to be proactive as best we can. The tricky part now is COVID. We're trying to be proactive with COVID, but as you know, governors can make requests or orders in a moment's notice. We have to react, right? And that's getting after the small teams aspect that I'm asking you guys to operate as flight commanders, to react, to be able to react to small teams. Don't wait for me to make a decision for you if I give you my commander's intent. That's a segue into the discussion later. I have some handouts, and I posted them on Slack for y'all to look at. Kind of Fry's familiar with a couple of these. It's very MPF heavy, talking about timelines. The one I want you to grab is the, it's yellow at the top, gray, it's the MOAFS, AFOAS timeline. So this is, so we went to winter and summer VML seasons. And the bottom line, as far as what matters for families and mostly you, is their report later than date months on the far right. So winter is that. January to May of 21 is a report no later than date. But as we all know, if you're going to go be an ATC white jet instructor, you go to PIT, and PIT's about 2.5 months long. And if they're ROMing, I'm not sure if I've heard if PIT is ROMing. Probably for us, we're coming from a red state for now. I make the assumption. Let's go to 3 months, right? So you back that up. Some folks will be looking at PIT starting in October. That's coming up quick. The good news is October in Texas is pretty nice, right? And they have Oktoberfest. It's pretty good in San Antonio. There's always a bright side to every point. Let's work through some of the other dates on here. So you see on that winter VML, there's some crossed out timelines and some red dates were added below. The reason for that is COVID, right? Things got pushed to the right. So we are sitting right now, it's the 15th of July, AFPC matches assignments. So we are at the end of that assignment cycle. I'll be the first one to tell you that's probably going to change again, because talking to Derek Patrick even this morning, they're nowhere near getting all the matches done. We're one of the first to actually get some locked in the system that they have, which is really a locked spreadsheet, and they convert that to BLIS and PDS, and then that kicks off rips and you get orders. So I'd assume that, I'd plan for that to go right. Doesn't matter, you know, there's no matter for y'all and no matter for us because we're locked in at this point. The 6 individuals that we are going to notify here the coming days that have assignments is going to bring us down to exactly 100%. Okay? And my agreement with Derek Patrick is, hey, if I'm at 100, am I going to be under the radar when the GOs get the list of who's over 100 and we still have another 40 white jets to fill? And he said, yes. So far, yes. 100 is the cutoff. So we are like 99.5% once these 6 individuals go. My feeling is once we get through this winter VML, that come summer VML, again, we'll be right at about 100%. We may only look at a couple people leaving the summer VML, unless it's something we want to do for those individuals, okay? We're gonna lose a few, hopefully, to school. We're gonna be looking at probably 2 that are gonna get school. We'll find out here soon when and where that's gonna be. So that's 2 off the docket right there. We're gonna have another individual retiring, Lieutenant Colonel Linton. So again, that's taking our number down. So my feeling is, again, obviously we're gonna get some folks that are coming from UPT, so welcome to Double Deuce over these coming months. My feeling is once we get through this winter VML, we're gonna be in a good spot where we can be proactively asking from here on out and not being a, hey, here's an indication in the system, a changing, you know, dynamic in the system you need to react to and try to be proactive, which is what we did. So that's that right now. I think I covered some of the nitty gritty of how this kind of all works. The other important part is we're coming up to the summer VML. If you want to look at the bottom line there, the VML will be posted here in about a little less than a month, right? 4 weeks. We're going to start this process all over again. You'll get an email. I'll get an email before that says, hey, here's your officers. Probably about 12 to 15 will be on the VML. If you follow that right, there's a reclama window. That's for me. So the commander goes, I want to reclama. Well, I want to reclama everybody. That's what Colonel Pollock did as well, because we were in growth industry, right? And we wanted to retain all that talent and to meet our crew ratio. So I'm going to reclama everybody that's on that VML. And then AAPC looks at that reclama window or that reclama request from each squadron. They see what the requirements are, and they go either yes or no. So Colonel Pollock reclamaed everybody. Not everybody was reclamated, right? When I stepped in the seat, I got a message about a month ago. It said, hey, these officers, it was denied. The reclama was denied. And I called Colonel Pollock. I was like, hey, we didn't get to talk about this. He said, yeah, you're right. So that's shocking. Talk to DP. It's probably, I wouldn't worry about it. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going on in the Air Force right now, but maybe it's COVID. Who knows? They're just creating some flexibility. And that's how this kind of all started. And then I called him and said, what's going on? And he said, I don't know. There's a meeting going on between APC, AETC, and the new CSAF. You know what I mean? And then here we are. So that's the timeline to watch now below, starting with 5 August. Where you step in is, well, for one, we kind of have these answers already. By 2 September, if you have 24 months time on station, 2 years time on station, haven't met with Colonel Kramer yet, just schedule some time, right? I'm leveraging his skills, his time to sit with you in his office, closed doors, and just talk about your future. Speaking of future, so handing any handouts here. This is new. This 11 mic, 12 mic mentor guide, right? So map pilots and navigators. This is really good, just kind of a starting point to look at things to consider, different programs, where you are in your career, what the Air Force thinks you should be doing. And for the majority of folks in the room, what the Air Force thinks you should be doing is becoming a good C5 pilot, instructor, or evaluator, depending on where you're at in your career. A functional expert to develop leader. And I'll be the first one to tell you, if you don't form the foundation now, it doesn't get easier as you get older. As you get older and you fly less and less, like myself, Colonel Kramer, the hard part is relearning, not relearning, but just kind of recalling, leaning on that foundation that you built when you were a lieutenant and a captain. That experience that you can fall back on. Again, that's why we track experience. You know what I mean? Let's see here. So that's my first request, that by 2 September, you schedule some time. At that point, you'll be pushing, if you're on the VML, I'll be asking you to put some comments in on what you think you'd like to do if you're requested to move in Talent Marketplace. So I'll be shooting that link out probably here in about a month. If you're unfamiliar with where that is, where you can just go into portal and type in Talent Marketplace and it'll pop up. And then, Lindsay, if I'm using wrong terms at any point, let me know. That way you can go in there and put your comments in. When you get them and send them, it goes straight to me. I read them. I meet with Lieutenant Kramer. We talk every day and see what you guys are thinking. I'll probably meet with you, right? We'll schedule those appointments for folks that I think are probably eligible to move. In my opinion, probably 3 years time on station, trending to 4 years time on station is about like the new normal as opposed to a minimum of 4. And then we'll have a candid conversation, right? Where you think you fit, where I think is probably good for you, your personality, your traits to benefit your family in the Air Force. And we go from there, and I put my comments in. When those comments are sent out, where you want to go, let's say you want to go do C-12s to Alaska. That squadron commander in Alaska gets 50 requests, whatever, from all over the Air Force to say, I have a guy for you. I have Lieutenant Bailey, needs to go fly C-12s in Alaska. Then maybe a captain, will be a Captain Bailey. He goes, oh, interesting. What's his background? Oh, UPT grad. Oh, he was in supply. Oh, he's your number one of whatever. Awesome. This is all good stuff. And he takes it and he looks at, I'll be doing the same thing. If you want to go to the double deuce, and we had how many millies on here? We had like 60 plus people that want to come to the 22nd from all walks of life, right? We're getting a lieutenant colonel here soon that has how many years in the Air Force? He hasn't flown Fred in 10 years. And he's come back to the double deuce. And he'll be here in about 4 or 5 months. And he'll be one of our line flyers. So that's kind of the gist of where this goes. And I get all those folks that are coming in that C-12 squadron commander up there in Alaska, for Captain Bailey in the future. I'm not saying that's what you want. He goes, all right, Bailey is my number 3 of SINs that want to come here and do this job, right? All that flows back to APC, Derek Patrick, you know what I mean? And also the, I forget who the functional is for C12, the C17 functional, looks and goes, all right, Bailey, it's probably time for him to move. Looks like we could probably do an opening, you know, into Elmendorf. And then he calls me and says, all right, what are you thinking? And when is a good date for us to sit down for an hour virtually, right? We do FaceTime once a week, myself with Derek Patrick, Colonel Hawk did that previously. It's great. So that kind of keeps that pump primed and that relationship built, which was I leaned on hard this past few weeks. And we can have that candid conversation of what's available and what works. And if I can keep you or not, or, you know what I mean, send you on your way to something hopefully you really want. That's kind of the gist of this whole VML shell game. I didn't fully understand this, and in Cosmo, you can back me up. I didn't fully understand how this all went down until I got, you know, in the seat of DO and Colonel Paul kind of, we talked through our turnover and really got the behind the scenes on what all occurs. A lot has changed, but previously when we were growing up, it was just kind of like, hopefully you had a conversation with the commander, maybe. He was a busy dude, busy gal. You talked about what you wanted, and he hopefully remembered. And then all of a sudden, you probably got an assignment or a talk from the chief pod said, hey, what do you think about going to ATC? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, going to Laughlin, like, it's going to be great. And you're like, oh, like, honestly, that's the nicest time of year. You know what I mean? That's really kind of how it went down. And in our, when we were captains, it was when the MC-12s were hot and heavy. RPAs were hot and heavy, where there was like 4 or 5 that dropped down to a squadron. And we would get the captains in the room. And you can tell your story of how that went down. Where there was, what, a spreadsheet? Yep. You're in double deuce. Who met with you as a squadron commander or chief pilot? Nobody. The spreadsheet, great. Spreadsheet comes out and says, figure it out, guys. You know, what do you
Fill
want
out your
to do?
spreadsheet, email it back. And then if I was going to put one term on the reaping, you guys have heard of the reaping? If I was going to give it a subtitle, it would be surprise, bitch. Because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to, that is like, that's like, it's baggage, like it's emotional baggage that we carry. You know what I mean?
We're not bitter.
We're not bitter because we're still here, right? And we, again, this goes back to seeing the side of each coin, right? The silver lining is so important in your career, even on demolition. You know what I mean? When you're like, mother effer, like it mins, and all I want is 2 hours of post mission. You gotta say no. You know what I mean? Like we're in Ramstein. I've been in the D for the past 2 days. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, let's find the silver linings, right? And that's gonna keep you in the fight. So when you're faced with a choice of whether I stay or go, each one's good. You're like, oh, I love it here. But also, like, here's pretty good on the outside too. Would that fit for my family? And it's much harder. You want to have the hard decision. You want to have hard decision. I want to have hard decision when it comes to choices. You know what I mean? I don't want easy ones because then it's like not a choice. It's like, I'm going to go do this. F the Air Force. I'm out. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't want that for any of you. So that's why we're doing as best we can. Be proactive for one, get what we want, get in front of the other squadrons, and I kind of feel a little draconian there because I'm kind of hosing some other people in different squadrons by trying to get ahead and grab them. But I was like, I'm here for you first. We're here for you first, not the other people. So that's that. Those 30 minutes, not bad. I'm gonna open it up for questions. There's a lot I just said. I'll take notes if any have questions. But I want to open the floor. First, could I be more communicative to you guys? No, question first.
Is it a general for all officers that they'll be at their first base for 3 to 4 years? There's nothing that's like definitive, just 3 or 4.
Yep. So I'll state an absolute right now. In the military, nothing's definitive, right? There's no absolutes in the Air Force. Even when you get orders, right? So these 6 individuals are going to get orders probably in the next 4 weeks. Even then, stuff changes. And the older you get, there's friends we have like the Hallbergs, you know what I mean? Now Colonel Hallberg was headed to be squadron commander in PC-10 Squadron McGuire. And literally as they were driving across, stuff was packed in their house. And they were leaving from Air Command Staff College in Montgomery, Alabama. Driving to through Tennessee on the way up to McGuire to go be the incoming DO, the flight squadron commander. They're like, hey, just kidding. You need to turn left, go west to McConnell. You're going to be a 135 squadron commander. Congratulations. Not a KC-10 squadron commander. And oh, by the way, you're like 135 recall class starts in 3 days. He was like, what the? You know what I mean? But then there was like, what's my choice? It was like, well, your choice is no command. Like, not no command McConnell. Like, no command ever. And he's like, all right, honey, that house we like put a bid on in McGuire. Now we're going to rent it. We're going to buy it. We're going to just rent that thing, which they still do. I don't know if you know Eric Hallberg and family. We're going to go be a 135 squadron commander. Worked out great because I went to Poggio. That's where I met him in Italy, right? And he got to stay in Poggio for 3 years and is now in Torrejon, Spain. He's gonna be there for 4 years and then retires in 2006. He saw the silver lining. It worked out awesome for him, okay? Again, another like, you gotta look at the bright side of things. But stuff is going to happen even when you have orders in hand and your crap is on its way to a house you just bought. Stuff changes. So, last point is, when we have these conversations and I'm like, hey, I'm locking you into this position, right? This assignment, that doesn't mean 99.9999% that you're going to get that assignment. That means like, we're probably like 90% sure you're going to get that assignment, but stuff happens. People at APC, where I told you it's not like, what's that Terminator, all seeing like Skynet. It's not Skynet, but it's infallible and beats humans, you know, in the singularity. People are up in it, mistakes. Okay? And when mistakes are made, the ripple effect can be drastic if we tell the world, hey, I'm going to. Just kidding. You know what I mean? So when we have that conversation, all I ask is that you be frank with me, talk to your family. Talk to your family, talk to your grandma. Your grandma's not playing on Facebook and post, hey, I'm going to Italy, you know what I mean, for the next 3 years, and then it changes. So that's that. When you get a rip, that 90% probably turns like a 96+%. You know what I mean? I'm throwing some numbers out there, but just based on what I've seen. When you get orders, like 99.99%. You know what I mean? You're going to said location when you have orders in hand. But that's when money starts flowing then. People start making actions in MPF to go. So back to your original question, 3 to 4 years. That's been a historical average. Cosmo, back me up, since we were lieutenants, right?
Yeah, I mean, the minimum, I've never seen the 24 months.
Yeah.
I've never seen that broken. So that's kind of the hard deck, if you will. I saw the shot. Yeah, hard deck. But yeah, 3-4 years is kind of the going rate.
3 trump cards that I can think off the top of my head. Humanitarian, right? I have a parent, spouse, brother, sister that's going through something, right? And I got to get there soon. Okay, move them. Doesn't matter. Inside a year. Command, okay, is another one they'll typically go down to about a year. And school is another one they'll go down to as little as a year to send you, especially if you're like in your third level. When I say school, sorry, intermediate developmental education, IDE, like Air Command and Staff College, Command General Staff College, Fort Leavenworth, you know what I mean? Naval Postgraduate School at Monterey, amongst the other fellowships, et cetera, that are around the Air Force or around the DoD and other partner nations. So does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Long answers. I think context is important. You know that from me. So I sometimes have long answers to short questions. But what else?
Do you have time for a plug on expectation management?
From Cosmo? Always.
All right. I'm just going to jump in real quick. Let's maintain our 6 feet.
6 feet.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know how this process works, this probably just blew your mind. So, you know, take the notes, digest, come see me. I love to talk to people. But I do want to talk about where my position comes into this and the commander and then you expectation-wise. So what we promise you is that we will break our ass to do what is right for you, the Air Force, your family, that I spend almost my entire day looking at my puck board thinking job-wise, assignment-wise, you are always on our minds. We truly believe that people are the most important resource and we will pour out sweat and blood to make it happen for you. What do we ask in return? Let's be realistic. All right. There is not a mythical C-37 squadron in Hawaii that has 1,000 pilot slots. I'm sorry. There are some great deals out there. But just because something is high value to some person doesn't mean that other things are not of high value. I would hate flying DV airlift. I despise the idea of flying for the 89th. I don't want anything to do with the C-21. Not that I'd fit anyway. But UPT appeals to me because I've taught students. I've seen the light bulb go off. The instructors in the room know what I'm talking about. I've worked those long days. I've got to go to the drop nights. I've got to go to, you know, ceremonies, pin and wings on people. I get a lot of gratification out of that. Maybe that's not you. Maybe it is. But let's talk about it. Just because you hear about a location or you hear about an opportunity and you're like, I don't want to go there. You don't know shit. You don't. And there's a lot of stuff I don't know. which is why I want to have the conversations, and we will do the research, and we will get somebody on the phone. What are things like at this base right now? What's the ops tempo? How are things? How's the family life? How's the community? Let's do a little research. So back to what we asked is some expectation management. Let's do some research. Let's find a good slate of options out there and talk about what really appeals to you. If any of you have come to my office or I've done a feedback session with somebody, probably the first thing I asked you is, what makes you happy? I don't care what you want to fly, where you want to live, but what really makes you happy? I like teaching. I like psychology. I like, I don't know, whatever Sparky's into. But what really gets you going, and we will try to match you with that. And I don't know how much time we have, but I'll give you my quick story on how I got booted out of the C5, just to give you some perspective. And I don't want to be like, oh, shit was so hard back in the day. You guys don't know how good you got it. Even though there might be a little truth to that. Maybe. I'm just saying. So when I was here, what job did I do? Yeah, I was coming off being a FAIT. I was a awards and decks dude, and then I was a flight commander, and then I went over as a group exec. I thought I was good. And then spreadsheet came out one day from the commander, who will not be named. She's still in the Air Force. I don't want to throw any spears, but spreadsheet came out. It had about 32 different assignments on there, and I called it the shit list. It was all the stuff that like you didn't actively work for. It was like, here's a bunch of MC-12s, here's a bunch of UAVs, here's a bunch of UPT stuff, and it was just a list. And you were like, rack and stack. Number one, I was like, I'm gonna put the MC-12, a bunch of other stuff. UAVs at the bottom, you know, not that that's a bad thing, but just not for me. Sent it in, wait a few weeks, surprise bitch, you're going to Beale. I was like, I've only been here 30 months. I just got my hours to upgrade to IP, so I run down to the DO because I was told making IP is important. And I run down to the DO, I'm like, hey man, can I do an in-house upgrade? I'm a FAIT, you know, help me out here. They're like, we'd only get a couple vocals out of you and it's not worth it. No. So I didn't make instructor, and they're kicking me to ACC as an 11R. But you know what? I got free ATP through flight safety in Atlanta. I got 10 air medals. I flew combat missions on 2 deployments working with the Air Force and the Army. We wasted some bad motherfuckers. I got to fly with enlisted air crew from all around. I got to do joint operations at night with bombers and fighters in the wheel. Made instructor, made evaluator, made a lot of good friends. And the bullets I got out of that probably are why I'm wearing, you know, blue oak leaves today. And I also got a great assignment out of it because I shone in that community. I made the best out of what was given, and it was really cool. Luckily, I got to work my way back here because this is where I always wanted to be. But man, we took some twists and turns. Even out of the MC-12, like I didn't want to fly the T6. I graduated dead last out of my T6 class. Terrible at it. Turns out I don't react well to Faves yelling at me. Because I went down to pit, it was a little laid back, and it was great. I figured it out. I figured out how the rudder worked. I'm like, this is great. I'm not in the T1 shooting a bunch of approaches all day. I can do formation in the morning, I can do instruments in the afternoon, and contact the next day, and still get a day's worth of work done, and actually teach some shit. So that was really cool. Where I'm going with all this is that there's goodness to be had everywhere. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what works for you, and don't be so quick to just kind of, you know, dump on particular assignments. But let's just be realistic. Expectation management, like we talked about with deployments, same thing with assignments. Please talk to your spouses and your families. Like, my wife's gonna kill me. You should have figured that shit out before you got married then. Just real talk. Like, if you don't know what the full slate of possibilities are and you haven't had that conversation, you need to have that conversation. Especially for the first assignment people, they're like, dude, I got to go here. Dude, my wife's going to kill me. I'm like, even if we made that happen, there's a third assignment before your commitment's up. What are you going to do on the next one? Even if you did get a good deal, it doesn't mean another one's going to happen. Just being real with you. So yeah, we will break our ass for you. I just ask that you communicate. Please come see me. Let's sit down and talk. I got good beverages in the fridge, not all alcoholic either. And expectation management. Just being real. Okay, that's all I got. Any questions for me before I? Okay.
That's really good. You can see why I leverage Cosmo, ask him to do these things, and I don't even have to ask him. He's like, "Hey, boss, I got a great idea." It's always a great idea. I say, "Go do it, man. You're freaking awesome." Okay, Q&A session, right? And this is almost like people are like, "Oh, I don't want to like look what 365 assignments are, not assignments, the deployments are out there. Somebody can see me that I'm trolling on the APC website for 365." No, like if you raise your hand and like ask a question about ATC or C21s or whatever, I'm not gonna be like, "I will." T6s, wow. You know what I mean? I'm asking a question about T6 pit, okay? Like, I don't have favorites. I'll be the first one to tell you. Like, what do I value? I value the hard work. I back my parents' call. Hard work, ownership, building teams, okay? Empowering people, you know, making yourself replaceable. That sounds crazy. You know what I mean? But like building the folks underneath you, so when you leave, the freaking shop continues, right? In the jet, building the folks beneath you. So when you go to a C-37 at Ramstein, okay, they step up and take the reins as the AC, the IP, or the badass co-pilot in the right seat, okay? All right. Questions? I'll stay here. I'll move appointments if we have questions.
Sir, the 6 assignments, was it, I think you said it was 100% what their first choice was out of it?
If they were willing to go to white jets, yes. I'll make that a quantifiable yes. You know what I mean? Of their white jet choices, yes.
Was it
So we did well.
Is it an even split between like T6 and T1, or was one favored?
Yeah, it was blended. It was blended. You know? And again, that's where I had to be real with Derek Patrick. I couldn't be like that bulldog first year squadron commander who thinks he knows it all. You know what I mean? To be like, I want all the T1s at Columbus. Not for the rest of the people. You know what I mean? Like, no. I got to go be like a partner in this and be like, okay, we'll work through this. You know what I mean? Like locations, airframe, training dates, you know what I mean, to work with the families. And that's where I think the biggest win was training dates. Usually you just get handed a training date. Or I was like, hey, there's life events going on for people. You know what I mean? Can we do a little bit later? Or there's other life events and can we do a little bit earlier? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that are in that conversation that if you do it early, and that's, like I said, we did it early, all those pit dates were laid out on a spreadsheet in front of them, and only like 5% were taken. And I was like, that is a moneymaker. I want that. Answer your question.
Yes, sir. Do you see them ever dipping below 100% in the operational squadron to facilitate a greater surge in EDT?
Yes, they're doing it right now. Some map squadrons going down 95%. And then when it hits 95% to go below that, it takes AFPC commander, 2-star, to go, yes, I'm willing to accept. I mean, he has a conversation with the NAF, 18th Air Force, 19th Air Force, 12th Air Force, for CAF, and that numbered Air Force commander say, we really need your people. Are you okay with 93%? Where a lot of the fighter squadrons are already at 93. You know what I mean? And they can't hold on to their folks. Even with COVID, they were like, no, I'm still out because the guard was higher with an AGR squad. Okay. Adam.
Sir, right now there's a bunch of majors, lieutenant colonels treading water in the Air Force. And in 2 years, the airlines turned that pipeline back on. There was mass exodus before. I can only imagine that mass exodus is going to be 10 times worse. If you're going to have UBT stockpile full of instructors, I mean, are these guys expecting to be there for 2 years and go right back to the MAP when all the MAP pilots that are essentially ineligible to go to UBT full chalks and they go to the airlines? I mean, this seems like a temporary solution to a chronic problem.
Yeah. So that's a great question. It's a crystal ball question a little bit, right? And that's a question that I need to carry forward because this is one where the Air Force is opportunistic, right? They look for some bright-eyed colonel, you know what I mean, or when a 1-star goes, oh man, this is an opportunity. And they pitch it to a 4-star, and a 4-star says yes. And there's a lot of second, third, fourth order effects that aren't addressed, right? A simple problem, quick fix to a chronic issue. I mean, that's we get into quality service, quality of life. Some things we're trying to fix in this squadron. So I don't know the answer to that question. Now, for those folks that are going their second assignment to those jets, they may not have, you know, retainability be a flip of the coin at that point. They may have 2 years retainability or not. I'm talking about key retainability. So when you get to your, within 2 years of your ADSC, I really can't move you. You know what I mean? It's like, Adam, when's your ADSC?
September 30th, 2021.
Yeah, so do the math. We're inside 2 years. So if APC were to give Adam an assignment to, let's say, RPAs, he'd be like, thanks, but no thanks. Because guess what? I don't have retainability. Meaning when I PCS him, I have to have 2 years that I can give him like ADSC, and that's not going to extend. I can't just, PCS can't extend your ADSC. So he'd be like, no thanks, 7 day off. I'm getting out. You know what I mean? That would force his hand. That would suck. We don't do that. But some people do that. That's how you get rid of old wood. I'll give you another peek under the tent. So I had another now retired lieutenant colonel, a buddy of mine at Poggio, was C-17 functional, Zach Lister. And he said that's how we have a term called get rid of some old wood. And the chief of rated assignments, usually an 06 or 06 selector to 1-star, he said would come in and be like, all right, boys, it's BML. Let's get rid of some old wood. And they knew it. I mean, that was code word for drop crappy assignments to 20-year majors and lieutenant colonels that weren't on the leadership track, to force them out, to force their hand and be like, hey, you know, RPAs to wherever, you know what I mean, or an assignment to wherever they go. And 20 years, I have to take this assignment, you know what I mean, or I punch. And they punch. Old wood, gone. So there's tools, and that seems very draconian of the Air Force to do, but it is still very much up or out. And then again, expectations management for that. That answer your question, Adam? I didn't answer your question, but I don't know.
It's like, I get what the Air Force is capitalizing on opportunity. And it sounds like they're doing it smart. I just, looking forward to down the line, we're fighting pilot retention crisis. It's paused. The fight's not over. The fight's going to get way worse in 2 years when American Airlines still has guys retiring. The pipeline has to turn back on. So the handful of folks that we all know that have been hired by airlines and still active duty, they go. All the folks that are able to get out and go, and then you get, you know, this giant hole where everyone drops down to 80% manning again.
Yeah, so there's
solve the problem.
diversification is always something I'm looking for, and I talk about diversification of age, ADSC, backgrounds. When I'm getting all folks that want to come into this unit, I look at that. So that way, in the event, I have a bunch of ADSCs that line up in a certain year group, a 10, 11 year group, I go, I'm not posed with an oh god situation. Like if they all decide to get out, we are tanked. You know what I mean? So that's something I try to manage, and Colonel Paul I try to manage, right? And hopefully this one I'm going to try to manage by year group to diversify, right? Pull folks in that are a certain year group, like a 13 with Asper, where he's young in a C5, right? But he's older in it with his background, as opposed to another, 13-year group who's a first assignment individual. Like, hey, they're long in the tooth now in the C5, but they're fresh to go somewhere else, right? And you kind of blend that out. So that way, if they both decided to leave an assignment later, I lose in this theory a co-pilot and aircraft commander. You know what I mean? Or a co-pilot and an IP. You know what I mean? That's something a lot of us manage at the squadron commander level as best we can. Again, the APC's got to buy off on it, and you're always justifying every decision you make, from having a C5 or a retirement next week in a hangar with maintenance to bodies moving, you know what I mean, to white jets, those like that. Okay.
You have some questions on there.
I did. Okay. Zoom text. Chat. Okay. Okay, someone's doing yoga. That's good. Okay, manage expectations, ATC builds in the summer VML. So Derek Patrick is telling me that we won't be able to fall 150 plus. Just sheer numbers, if we dip down, even down to below 100%, we'll fill about 80 to 90. That's going to leave 60 left over. So do I think it's going to be a rollover to the summer VML? Yeah, I think so. My hope is it won't be as many, it'll be less. And in that time period, hopefully, my hope is we have some folks that are like, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that. That'd be good. And then it's an elective as opposed to a push to go do that. So hopefully that answers that question. Again, it's a crystal ball. Did they consider doubling or tripling fate slots out of UPT? Oh man, if you want to crush, I'll look at Adam Smith. If you want to crush souls, that's the first way, right, to create a chronic problem is you fake half the class. So I would say no. All right, that was Sam's. That's a joke. Thank you, Sam's. Gosh, I didn't pick up on that. All right, Lighter. Do you think that APC will ever take time to analyze the timeline of Manning to possibly dampen the sine wave of Manning that seems to persist? No. That's tough. Will the Air Force ever allow people to develop as SMEs to help increase the technical expertise instead of diverting everyone into command track? Okay, so a couple questions there. The sine wave, that's hard to manage because there's psychology with that. I'll start right there. There's some human mind aspects right there with things that are occurring. There's a couple indicators that I'm waiting to see on, back to Adam's question, with could we see ourselves in another dire situation, a worse situation, right? Because talking to my buddies that are airline captains, right, and you all came to my roof stop, and I didn't know it was going to happen, that he was there talking to this. He's been telling me, like, all the airlines are posturing almost like a drag race, waiting until, like, the green light occurs and people are allowed to travel again, the economy starts back up. Because then they're like, we need to grab every single pilot and man every plane that's hopefully being maintained and ready to rock like a drag race to get out and go. Because they're waiting to capture new cities, right, that haven't, been idle. Like Pittsburgh, you know what I mean, that, typically was a United hub. Is like Southwest is like, we want to freaking just take it over. You know what I mean? And if we can get there first and get all that market, we can force out United. So yes, that precipitates a hire everybody type of attitude. You know what I mean? And once that spreads, it could be awful. That said, they could be out of Afghanistan in a year. Do I think we will be? I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's also political season, and who knows? In 2 months, our president would be like, "We're getting out by the end of like December." And I was deployed when President Obama made that announcement. You guys remember when he made the announcement about Iraq? And we were like, "Oh God," because we were sitting there with C-130s, C-17s, the Mooses. We had all these established bases in Iraq, right? When we first went to Iraq, right, 2002, 2003, and built all that up to 2011, as I was in the EMD in the feed. And we were like, oh God, this is going to be crazy awful because we have 4 months to move literally mountains of shit and people out of a pre-established bases and FOBs in Iraq. And what happened? We left Tricons full of M16s and F-350s that were literally brand new coming in and being dropped off the bases. They were opening the gates to all the local, well, call them what you will, the sheiks, whatever, the warlords of that town were like, oh, sweet. You know what I mean? Let's see what's in here. But we were like, we're leaving because we have to be out by midnight on the 31st of December. I remember hearing the radio calls. It was ridiculous. We can talk about that over beer some other day. It's more story. So that can happen. It could happen. You know what I mean? Like, is this politically motivated? It could totally happen. Guess what? We just go, yes, sir. You know what I mean? Now all of our missions that are going west are going east, and we're going into, Bagram and Kandahar, taking all our crap out as fast as we can to meet the deadline. And that could happen. And guess what? Now all the flights to the Pipper go from 45 a day to 0. You know what I mean? And guess what? Now we're doing a lot more of the missions than maybe we think are better. I'm going to say that. So that's a flip in the other direction where people go, I'm going to stay in now because the war's over. I don't know, right? It's a crystal ball question. Okay. What else? Did I miss any? That was lighter. Command track. We can talk. I'd like to say that last question about creating like a fly-only track. That's where I think where he was going with keeping folks for like 5-6 years, or just doing coast to coast to coast. I've only seen a couple. So Mara was one that did a coast to coast to coast. Then got out. Who's another one that's like this? John Flowers. Yep, I met John Flowers at Dover. That was his second assignment. Then he came back third assignment. Now I think he's going to be teaching at the Sim building here in a few months. He's not already. Does the Air Force see that traditionally as good for your career? I'll say no, because they value breadth, and that if you read into this, they want to see you to be developed. Because I'll be perfectly honest, you know what I mean? When she has, if she or he were able to come here and talk to you and say, hey, white jets, man, you want to talk about white jets? Yeah, I don't know, I know C5s, you know what I mean? It's valuable to have that breadth of background and have those experiences to lean on. For one, they make cool stories of crews. For two, that you can talk truthfully.
Just because the way the Air Force is modeled may take you out of the C5, which it likely will, That's not because they want to make you a commander necessarily. Like, I got to live the dream. I didn't have to go to school or staff. I'm 805. I'm doing a job I love. It's awesome. Things I learned in the MC-12, I can apply in the C5. Sure as shit, stuff I learned as a pit instructor in T6s, for any of the IPs I flew with, I was applying that stuff on my upgrade rise. It's actually a negative for me if I see somebody who did 3 C5 assignments. Great, you know the C5, but that's assuming that we got our shit wired. We don't. You can pull it. Fez is pulling shit out of the KC-10 community that I think is cool. Why don't we do that? And I'm sure it's the same vice versa. It's not about being molded into a commander. It's about being an officer and having those leadership opportunities and being a more well-rounded person. That's what makes you effective. If you just want to be like a monkey actuating the switches, like, you say that for the airlines, but you won't get through the interview because they're looking for dynamic people who bring more to the game than just somebody who does this. So it's not necessarily the command thing. There's more to it, perspective-wise.
On a lot of points. Thanks, Gautam. Okay, great questions. What else? Like I said, I'll move the day. We can go on and on and on. No? Nothing? Okay. Any questions about the letters I published about COVID? I'll take this opportunity to take Spears, or I think it's good to communicate. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get commanders update quarterly, or if we have significant changes in the environment. Governor Newsom's announcement, the school announcements, that's what prompted me to do it a little bit early instead of waiting for that commander's update. Is that good? Is that helpful? Focusing on trying to like do what we're doing now. I'll be the first one to admit sometimes I forget. You know what I mean? I get my office, I take it off, and I walk out and ask a question like, shit, now I'm inside 6 feet, and I just totally pose you guys potentially. You've got to be disciplined, and I would ask you as officers to help me and the team be disciplined as well. Okay. I'm looking for feedback. You know what I mean? If you guys need more communication, I'll push more communication. If it's too much, you know, there's a fine balance between over communicating, you know what I mean? Too much where that's just thrash and you stop paying attention. Or when it's not enough and you're like, I do not know what the commander's thinking. You know, we made this choice to go do X, Y, or Z. Like tomorrow, bring everybody in. You'll know when I bring you all in why. It's not like an emergency situation, but it's something that we need to talk about that occurred back in October. There you go. Does that make sense? I think I'm looking for feedback, guys. I got some great feedback from Drew Payton when he left. Starrison gave me some great feedback when I went over his retirement talk with him. We want it. We're the first one to tell you we need that feedback. I never had a squadron commander tell me like, hey, tell me what I'm doing wrong. You know what I mean? Maybe I had one. I really want to know. You know what I mean? I want to flatten our discussion opportunities. Yeah, I'm busy, but that's also all we have. Other individuals, you know, flight commanders, chief pilot has leverage with he has my ear. You know, the DO has my ear to communicate whenever you guys can. If you need to. Okay, or like I said, my door's open. If it's an emergency, I'll drop everything. You can call me if you can.
Or if you feel awkward about going to a commander and be like, this is bullshit. That's what I'm here for. I'm the interpreter. I will take the feedback. You can come in, they're fucking up, and I will take your righteous indignation. I will channel it and package it neatly and pass it along to the boss. No retribution, no attribution. So feel free to use my confessional if you need it.
Confessionals. Okay, what else? These helpful, these OPALs, I want to probably do a little more often. It's tricky with COVID, but we're doing the best we can. We're using, you know, Zoom as best we can to talk. Not many folks have kids in this room. There's a few. Yep, where the new school announcements are going to change things, or even just preschools and change things. We're not quite sure what we're going to do because I'm still waiting with the wing. They're just being proactive with giving you guys the information. They're just kind of being reactive to wait and see what resources are going to be available. You know what I mean? For like dual income families that the wing could possibly offer, or even the state of California, right? It's more of a social singing state, but in theory, they should have some support structures, you know what I mean, available for times like this. So I'm waiting in a certain sense, but in the moment, you know, the speed of relevance, I'll be asking the flight commanders to deep dive into the flights and see who's really at risk, right? Where that second income is super important. And now that individual is going to have to be at home, one of them is going to be at home. But the kids, how does that impact the mission? Both in Garrison and on the road. We'll work through it. Okay. Anything else? Anything. Not just VML assignments. Whether the Steelers are the best football team in the world, which is obviously a clear answer there. Anything else? All right, guys. My door's always open. Come grab me. Come grab Cosmo. The DO's available. Fez, I'm open to you. Is there anything you want to add before we close? Okay. That was an hour. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. See you out there.